everyone, BJ Weiler here finally once again for our first episode of Awesome Sauce for Games for 2015. I know it's been quite some time since we actually been able to get one of these babies, these commentaries, these around some thoughts about the gaming world out, but yeah, what can I say? Real life has been quite busy for us the last few months. Lots of exciting changes for us, anyway, going on in the old Weiler household. But I will not bore you with those details. Anyway, what are we going to talk about for this first stupidously fantastic episode for 2015? As you might have guessed from the title, it's about the death of the MMO. Yes, MMOs are dead. Long live what? I don't know. What would replace the MMO? We have single-player games, I guess, with multiplayer options. Oh, they've been around, yes. No, in all reality, the MMO is not dead. Although, of course, there's always that talk about, well, this game is dead, that game is dead, this game is dead. No. Despite what many people would like us to believe, the MMO is not dead, and thanks to the wowification of the genre, to which some of these, the MMO is dead statements come from, it is alive and well and thriving. Indeed. But what brings this topic up? It's one I've been thinking about for quite some time. As I said, we've been quite busy and all that. Oh, by the way, thanks for everyone. Here's my Extra Life t-shirt. Thanks for everyone who supported Extra Life back in October. We've reached our goal. We beat our goal again for the second time of the year. I'm already looking forward to this year. I will be signing up shortly and starting to promote that. I believe, again, it's going to be late October, early November. I forget the exact date offhand, but there will be more of that coming up over the summer. Anyway, thanks to my supporters. I hope to see more this year so we can beat our goal again. Anyway, the topic for this, why is the MMO dead? Well, let's find out. Let's find out from the November 2014 issue of PC Gamer. Yes, it's an actual, look at this, it's not digital, it's an actual magazine, yes. Gaming magazines in general, PC magazines can actually still exist in today's digital world. What a novel concept, Ziff Davis. Yes, what a novel concept indeed. Anyway, this topic comes from the Hotmail of the letter section, which is basically their letter of the month, written by Joe. Let's see what Joe had to say. I've just given up on WildStar, the most promising MMO RPG to come out for a while, and I have to ask, is the MMO RPG as good as dead? Well, why does Joe feel like that? Well, let's find out. Later on in the letter, I start a new MMO RPG with highish hopes, only to realize that it's the same old format with a few tweaks. My main problem is the feeling of why am I doing this? He also goes on to say, when will somebody actually make an MMO RPG with a story that progresses? What? Anyway, where unique events happen that actually mean something. Well, that has nothing to do with the progression of story, Joe. But anyway, where a team of top players kill the big bad boss, it doesn't respond, and the game world changes permanently. So is that what you're talking about, Joe? The MMO is dead because the big bad boss does not stay dead? Anyway, well, the PC Gamer editors responded by saying, big MMOs burdened by old design ideas is an issue. But WildStar was actually a strong refresh of some of those concepts, yada, yada, yada. At the end, they say, maybe you, referring to Joe, just have a problem with fun. Does Joe have a problem with fun? Or does Joe just not understand the difference between MMOs and single-player games? Well, on that topic, no, I don't think Joe has a problem with fun. I just think as the MMO has developed, as it has developed, I don't think they are burdened by old design ideas. I don't think really that's an issue. I think what they are burdened by is the actual concept of what an MMO is and how an MMO can actually function in the gaming world. Now that's changing a little bit with something called phasing, which we'll get into a little bit later here. But what Joe basically is talking about is taking what you would typically find in gameplay for single player games and just throwing it into an MMO. Well, while that may seem like a great and interesting concept on the surface, it just can't work just because of the very nature, the very difference of the nature between single player games and MMOs. When you go to a single player game, yes, you can kill the big bad boss. Yes, it can change the world permanently. It can stay dead for the rest of your time playing the game because that game, that story, that experience is just for you as that one player. So what you do has absolutely no bearing on what anybody else playing that game, even if they're playing it at the same time as you, has no bearing on their gameplay experience, just as their gameplay experience has no bearing on yours. That's how single player games operate. So they can throw in these concepts to where, yes, you can go out, kill the big bad boss, it stays dead, and somehow it affects the world permanently because you don't have thousands of other players jumping in to play the game after you and starting through that storyline and having missed that content, having nothing to do because that content is already gone and consumed. See, that's the difference between MMOs and single player games, and that's something it seems that a lot of players just don't seem to understand at this point. You know, a lot of new MMO players are coming from the single player experience and they want to have that experience in their MMOs. But what they don't understand is that you just cannot do it just by the very nature of the MMOs, that you have all these players. They all want to experience content too. They all want to have fun playing this game. Well, if you have single player elements like this, where a group of players goes out and kills that big bad boss, well, only the content locusts and only one group of the entire content locusts of game will ever experience all the fun the game has to offer, will experience all the content the game has to offer, because you can only kill that big bad boss once. You can only change that game world once. So whoever happens to do it first, they get the fun. Everybody else gets, well, what am I going to do now? That piece of content is no longer available. Let me go over there. Oh, somebody beat me to that piece of content and destroyed that town. So I guess I can't experience anything over there. Oh, let me head over there. Oh, somebody beat me to that. So there's the concept. That's why it just can't work in MMOs. You have to reasonably build the game to where every player playing can experience the same level of content, can experience the same level of fun, regardless of when they started playing and regardless of how fast they play. That's why a concept like Joe wants will never work in MMOs, just because you cannot limit the fun or 100% of the content to basically a fractional of a percentage of the player base who's playing that game, because it may be fun for that fractional percentage, it's basically not so fun for everybody else, and eventually everybody else will say, well, I guess I'm just not going to play this game because I can't experience all this fun content. I'm just going to spend my money elsewhere, and what happens? The game shuts down. So, now of course this concept isn't new. I mean, we've had recent games in the past that have tried to do something similar, tried to instill less of a static or scripted nature to their MMOs, such as Rift, such as Defiance, such as Guild Wars 2 with their living story. All these games have their dynamic or their random events, which really aren't random, but scripted events that occur randomly. But it sort of gives a living feel to the world. But again, you can only go so far with this stuff. I mean, the biggest case here is ArenaNet with Guild Wars 2. We know of all the promises. We know about the manifesto. We know what Colin Johansson said while the game was in development about taking all this stuff we loved about Guild Wars 1, moving it to Guild Wars 2, although they forgot monks, they forgot dervishes, they forgot all this stuff that I found fun about the game. In Guild Wars 1, they sort of left all that fun stuff out of Guild Wars 2. But anyway, that's a whole other topic, why Guild Wars 2 sucks. Anyway, they experience the same thing. This whole manifesto about, oh, we don't have grind. We have all these dynamic events we're building that will change the world permanently. Already the red flag rose in my head, said, no, you cannot really do that. It's not going to work. Because why? Well, just because of how I explained it. Because you will have a fractional percentage of your player base getting through all that content and nobody else able to experience it. Hey, Joe, did you experience that awesome dynamic event I just experienced? We just killed this big, massive dragon. There are hundreds of players all here. We're all battling. Everybody was dying. Oh my God, it raised the town. We came back with these centaurs to help us. It destroyed it. No, Frank, I missed out on that. I wasn't able to play that day when that event went down. Although I am helping this gnome wash his socks. Oh, the joy. Yes. Gnome washing socks. What a tremendous event. But you get my point. It just cannot happen in the way that a lot of players now would like them to happen. I mean, that's the difference between theme park and sandbox, which we discussed in an earlier episode of Awesome Sauce. The theme park, you have, it's basically a script. You have the developers leading you on this adventure. Where sandbox, it's basically the players creating their own content. But again, you can figure single-player games could be a little bit sandboxy, but you can have a mix. You can bring some of the concepts in, which, again, like I mentioned earlier, phasing helps us bring this kind of stuff into MMOs, but you still can't do it in the completely single-player game nature. Even phasing just cannot allow us to do that on a grand scale that we need for MMOs at this point in time. Perhaps in the future, as technology advances and the technology of phasing gets better, we can actually eventually have this single player type of concept in our MMOs. But then again, you fracture the player base more and more, the more people will get phased out. So what is phasing? I keep using this term phasing. So for those of you not familiar with phasing, it's basically this new concept we've seen pop up in a couple of MMOs, Defiance in particular. Since I'm not playing Guild Wars 2, I don't know how much they actually use it, but when I was playing Defiance, they used this technology. And Guild Wars 1 actually did use it a little bit towards the end, when they started developing their sort of add-ons after the Eye of the North campaign, the expansion, which sort of closed out the story of Guild Wars 1. What they did, they had sort of mini expansions that were built right into the original games of prophecies and factions that sort of advanced some of the storylines there. And what happened is, if you picked up a certain quest, it changed the explorable areas if you had this quest active. So it was sort of a primitive concept of what phasing is, but generally what phasing is, it's, let's just say you're a player, you're playing this game, and you've reached a certain part of the storyline where you have to go to this town which exists in the game. You've gone to it in the earlier story. Let's say it's just the main central hub of the town. That's where you start. As a new player, you start in this town, and you start your quests there and this kind of stuff. Well, along in the storyline, let's just say some sort of invasion comes in and levels the town. The town is completely destroyed. Well, in a single-player game, that's no problem, because you're the only one playing. Having that town destroyed affects nobody, because there's nobody else who's going to be starting that game. And, of course, the town's the starting area. Starting that game in the town where they need to have the town back whole again with all the quest givers and that kind of stuff. So, how does this work in MMO? Well, it works through phasing. It's like, once the veteran player goes through this storyline, sees the town destroyed, he is actually, while still in the actual game world, he's in a different phase of the game world, to where he is advanced long enough so he may be in the same game world, but it's a slightly altered version of the game world that doesn't affect anyone else who hasn't reached that point. So he could literally, in some cases, he could literally be staying next to a player in-game, see this player in-game who just started the game, and they could be looking at the town. He sees it destroyed. The new player sees it whole. That's how phasing works. So even though they're in the same game world, they are along different, basically, parts of the timeline in that game world. So the veteran player is actually in a future point, even though he's staying next to the new player. So they can still interact. You can still get that MMO feel, but the game world isn't changed for the new player the way it is for the veteran player. So that's how you sort of get around that. That's how we will sort of bring in more and more of these single player type game elements to MMOs is by using this phasing feature. Now, of course, if the veteran player wanted to group up with that new player, you'd still have to work around the technology of the problem of, okay, how is he going to help this new player if those quests aren't available, that kind of thing, since he's further along the storyline, and you don't necessarily want the new player's experience getting ruined by knowing about future events, seeing the future events that the veteran player can see. So that's why it's still limited in some ways, that the phasing can work to where you can have truly dynamic, truly world-changing events in the game. It still not have it affect everybody else. But again, things like what Joe's talking about, what other players would like to see, to where you go to this kill this big bad boss and he's dead permanently, changes the game world for everybody. That's where some players would like to see. I want to kill this boss. I want everybody to know this boss is no longer here because of us. No, that boss still has to exist for the new players so they get to experience that content. So we're not quite at that point to where we can actually have these permanent world-changing events, even though Guild Wars 2 has tried to do it with some sort of things like the destruction of Lion's Arch, which still, I mean, it's minimal stuff. It's mainly visual. It's not changing the world as they originally promised with their dynamic events and this kind of stuff, which again, as I said, it's just common sense tells you you cannot do that at this point in time. And even with phasing, there are still going to be limitations to where you can't change it for everybody. It's not going to work. You know, you will turn away more players than you would attract with this type of thing, because hey, you can say, hey, you know, yeah, this new game out, we do all this stuff, you know, you come in, you kill the big bad boss, that's it, you're the only ones who fought him. Everybody who likes this concept can say, oh, I like that, let me head into this game, I want to play this game, I want to be part of that. Well, you'll find that everybody else beats you to it, so you're just standing there twiddling your thumbs. And of course, we can say, well, developers can always create new content, constantly creating new content. Come on, really? I mean, how many times have we to have this argument about content rushed out in time, content not being added to MMOs fast enough for players to consume this and that? Developers are human. Shockingly enough, they are human. They can only do so much with the time they have. They cannot just keep spitting out content constantly, day after day, hour after hour, to support a completely open system like a lot of these players want. It's just impossible, even with phasing technology. So that is that. The MMO, no, it is not dead. The concepts may be old and tired to some people, or how did they what's that? Old and tired. What is it? Where's the letter? So burdened by old design ideas is an issue. No, let me talk about that a little bit. No, it's not a burden. It's just how they are. I mean, are single player games burdened by their tropes and tired old content and design systems? No, they are that way because it's necessary for them to be that way. Are the designs old and tired? No, I don't believe so. You can, I mean, nothing new. How is the old phrase? It's like there are only 10 original ideas for anything you can think of. So you may think your game idea is new and original. No, you've got thousands of other people who've already come up with the exact same thing that you did. So, yes, there is a formula. There is a formula to MMOs, or a formula to a great many other things. There's a formula to, spy novels, the spy genre. Yeah, there's a formula. It's not tired, it's old. It's how that particular formulaic, that's why there is the word formulaic, genre works. So, questing, storylines, persistent worlds, that stuff. I mean, Trinity, things like that are always brought up as tired old concepts, but, is the wheel a tired old concept? Or is the wheel just a thing that works well and doesn't need to be changed? Because You can't make the wheel any better than it is. It's round, it rolls, it gets you where you're going. Why do you need to change it? It works. You can change how pretty it looks, stuff like that, sure. And every MMO that comes out does something a little different. Whether they focus on story, such as Star Wars: The Old Republic, where it focuses on more dynamic events, such as Guild Wars 2, or whether it focuses on cross-media content, such as Defiance, which ultimately fails because sci-fi didn't like that concept somehow, or they just, I don't know what the hell happened there, but that's a whole nother episode in and of itself. But things like that, each game has its different spin on the formula of the MMO. What you need to realize as a player is that this formula works. It's been in existence for 10 years. It's been modified. It's been, you've got games that do it well, games that don't do it well, which is irrespective of the actual formula itself. But you have to realize that there's certain things that work well and simply don't need to be changed. Maybe you are looking for something different, but that's like going to your favorite pizza restaurant and saying, what, maybe I want some Mexican from here. No! If you want Mexican, go to a Mexican restaurant. So if you want single player concepts or you want a certain concept from a game, go find a game that offers it. You don't need to change. You don't need to say, hey, this is a tired old concept, we need to get rid of it. No, because the concept works. The pizza shop works. There's no need to get rid of the pizza shop just because you feel like having, a burrito more often than not at this point in time. Nothing wrong with the pizza shop. Nothing wrong with the burrito. They are just two different concepts. And nothing wrong with either one. If you want to happen to enjoy that one for now, go enjoy that one for now. If you happen to enjoy this one for now, enjoy this one for now. But don't tell the pizza shop, well, you got to change because I want a burrito. No, a pizza shop is a pizza shop, just like an MMO is an MMO. MMOs don't necessarily need to change the formula. The formula works. Millions of players are playing them. Millions of players find the formula fun. I've played a lot of different MMOs. They've each done something different. They've each, tried to be innovative. They've each tried to do things. And I've found something to enjoy about each one. Not all of them were to my taste. Some of the changes some of them have made, I have certainly not agreed with. But again, that's me as a player. I come in there expecting, okay, what are you offering? Do I like it? No. Then I'll go continue to play the stuff I do like. I'm not here saying, well, every game needs to do this now, needs to do that now, this and that. There are no MMO standards. Contrary to popular belief, there are no MMO standards. Not every MMO needs to have housing. Not every MMO needs to get rid of the Trinity, this and that. Not every MMO needs to have customizable UI or all these things that we take for granted in the game we find to be our main game, the game we find to be fun. No, it's not necessarily necessary in all these other games. So, anyway, enough about that. The MMO, no, it is not dead. The MMO is not a tired old formula. It is a formula that works. It's a formula that millions find fun. It's a formula that, yes, can use some tweaking here and there. You can pretty it up. You can do different things with it. But ultimately, the core functions of the MMO, the core things we see, they work. They're fun. And they allow millions of us, irrespective of our religion, irrespective of our status in society, irrespective of where we live in the world, to come together and enjoy something as a whole. So that's the one fun thing about games. So maybe that's what we should take away from this episode, is that, there are millions of us. Each of us have a different idea of what we find fun. But each of us have to realize that while others may, have similar feelings, that ultimately what we find fun is unique to each of us. And there's no need to change things from what they are. Yes, we can innovate, we can improve upon what we have, but ultimately the core things that keep us playing these games, the single player games, the MMOs, the FPSs, the RPGs, the RTSs, the TBSs, turn-based system, or the turn-based strategy game, all that stuff. Each one has its own unique formula, core design that makes it what it is. I mean, that's why, we are attracted to it, because there are these certain elements of it that make the game what it is, that appeal to how we play that certain game. We start to change that, and then it basically all goes to hell in a handbasket. So, no. The Trinity, things like static worlds, scripted, I don't want to say static, but scripted worlds and MMOs, they're part of the appeal of the MMO. There's no need to change it. It's fun in and of its own right. Just as having dynamic stuff, things that you can change by your own actions in a single player game, make them what they are. So, if you're looking for that kind of fix, go play a single player game. There's nothing wrong with that. If you like, what MMOs have to offer, go play MMOs. There's nothing wrong with how they're doing it. Ultimately, we each find different things fun, and we need to actually start embracing what we find fun instead of demanding that each and every little thing that we don't find fun or we find as an annoyance in the game be changed, because ultimately it might not necessarily need to be changed, and changing it might not be the best idea. Until next time, in fact, until next week when we discuss a little bit of Elder Scrolls Online. Could it be going free to play? Now, there's an interesting topic. Yes, we will tackle that topic. As a matter of fact, next week, because we're going to be trying to pump out as many episodes as we can when we have for the time in between our moments of peaceful bliss. Anyway, this is BJ Waller saying thanks for watching. Stay tuned for 2015. A lot more live streams coming, a lot more, hopefully, gaming videos we can get up in the future. We got more casting with Poop Socks coming. We will have another It's All in the Wrist series. Haven't quite decided yet what I'm going to do with that. It's certainly not going to be 6 games through the course of this year. It was a little bit too much even for me. But I think we will eventually have our wizardry finale where we finally beat Wern. At some point, I'm going to beat him. But I gotta get back in there and level up a little bit more. But anyway, thanks for watching. This is BJ Waller saying, until next time, I will see you in game.